Hey people on the Thule Webs, I'm Mr. Spork and these are Mr. Spork's hands. I thought I would do a little cooking for you tonight. I'm going to turn on the live stream and do it in real time. Then I'm going to take out all the boring bits and edit it down into something much more digestible. But I thought you guys might want to watch while I did it live. So I'm doing chicken and rice tonight. Arroz con polo, or sometimes called Spanish rice, Mexican rice. Some people call it Puerto Rican rice because the origins of the dish, while I think can't really be pinned down to one place, there's a lot of argument back and forth. You see chicken and rice all over the globe. Everything from chicken biryani in India to chicken and rice wrapped in banana leaves for a Chinese dim sum. It's just a universally liked combination, chicken and rice. Mine is going to be different from everybody else's because it's different every time I make it. So anyway, live stream going. If you guys want to chat, go right ahead. I'm just playing around with some new technology as well. So, oh look, watch this. How cool is that? 2 cameras now. Hey, you guys remember the old setup. That's where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with the chicken tonight. What I've done before, I borrowed a technique from tandoor cooking where you marinate in yogurt. And I've gone ahead and done that here, although I'm sure it's been done before, but I hadn't seen it any place, at least not for Mexican, Spanish, Latin American cuisine. So in here is nothing more than chicken breasts. I made some slashes in the biggest part of the breast just so they'd cook evenly, and plain unflavored yogurt. I try to get the kind without gelatin in it. That's just my personal preference. And a couple tablespoons of mixed spice. I'm going to call it mixed spice. It's basically Mexican spices. I keep a big, huge jar of this stuff. I don't put salt in here, but I use this for making tacos and bean dip and just about anything Mexican, Latin inspiration. It's good paprika. Sometimes I put a little smoked paprika in there, but not all smoked paprika. That'd be too much. Some cumin seeds, some black peppercorns, some garlic granules, some Mexican oregano, that sort of stuff. It's kind of my universal spice, and I promise you, as much Mexican food as I eat, I'll get through this whole jar in like a month at most. But anyway, I put a tablespoon or 2 of that in with the yogurt, stirred it around. I did that last night, so it's had a good 12, 14 hours in that mix. I'm going to use a little more of this spice later, so I'm going to keep it out. I'm into a uncoated cast iron skillet. I just like that for cooking the chicken because what I want to try to do, since I'm not going to go outside in the weather with a barbecue, although that would be delicious over charcoal especially, I use an uncoated cast iron skillet because I get more burny, gnarly, charred bits, and I like that. So let's see if I've got this all plugged in here. I'm going to go with a relatively high heat, and my only caution is make sure you got a good fan because you will get a little bit of smoke with this going on. I'm just going to let that heat up. I just got a little tiny bit of vegetable oil or olive oil in this case, but you could use any neutral oil that you've got. I just happen to have a surplus of olive oil, so that's what I'm going to use. Got to get that up to temperature. Over here, let me show you what I got working. I'm going to cook this all, bake this all in the oven afterwards, but this is a brazier. If you don't know what a brazier is, it's basically a low, wide pan, and you want that for good evaporation with the rice, when the rice is cooking. And it basically, the shallower dishes do a better job when you're trying to get rice to absorb the liquid in this kind of dish. So that's what I'm using. It's in this case, this is enameled cast iron rather than raw cast iron. A little bit of chicken stock, only because I had them and I needed to use them up. I've got some mushrooms. I think there's like 6 mushrooms that I just pulsed in the food processor. I got a little bit of tomato paste. Got some leftover tomatoes that weren't. I didn't use them the other night, so I threw them in the freezer for a couple nights, pulled them out. I'm going to throw in some bell peppers, which is a little bit busier than a lot of Mexican rice recipes you see, but I got them and I love them. A little bit of onion, and of course the rice. The rice I'm going to use it's an ordinary long grain white rice, and I'm going to use a 1 to 1 1/4 ratio. So by volume, 1 part rice, 1 1/4 parts liquid. In this case, to fit this pan, I'm going to use 600 grams of rice. I'll show you guys my fancy schmancy new scale here in a minute. to around 700 milliliters of chicken stock. So that's what we got going on over here. Here's the new scale. I'm very pleased with this. So somebody sent me a comment asking what scale I used, and the one I had was okay, but not the greatest. And I got this crazy thing on a warehouse deal. Somebody had returned it. I can't find a single thing wrong with it. I think they just didn't like the color. It's gram accurate. Very, very pleased with that scale. I'll do a whole video on that later. Again, just getting that temperature all the way up. You'll see my new assistant. See if I can show you. She's not supposed to be up there. Come on now, you're not supposed to be up there, but she smells the chicken stock. Don't worry, I sterilize the counter every time she hops up. She usually stays over on her corner though. She's a good girl. She's my new addition to the family. We'll talk about her in another video too. We just had kittens, if you guys have been watching the live stream. So, are you coming to visit? All right, there we go. So, again, I really want this pan properly preheated. I don't want to go into a cold pan because with all the liquid that's in this marinade, I'd be steaming the chicken. That's not going to give me those beautiful charry, burny bits that I want. So let it get nice and hot. Yep, we're there. It was ready for it anyway. So just a little bit of oil, a couple tablespoons, and in goes the chicken. I'd normally do this over on my stovetop, but I haven't figured out how to film on my stovetop yet. You want that sizzle. Now, I'm going to cook all of this, but I don't want to crowd the pan. I just want to leave that. Once they're in, don't touch it. Just let it do its thing. Really get those burnt, charred bits going. When I turn it, I'm going to use an actual spatula because I want to make sure I get underneath and get as much of that char on the chicken as opposed to using tongs where it has a tendency to sort of rip. I think I'm going to call this chicken and rice with Shaggy chicken. I want those gnarly, burny bits in it. That's some of the chicken and rice recipes I've seen. They always just put the chicken breast right in the rice and let it cook, which is fine, but it doesn't make the chicken particularly interesting. So I'm going to get these charred, gnarly bits on it, and then I'm going to cut it into nice, generous pieces. I'll probably cut those breasts into 3, maybe 4 pieces at most, and nestle that into the rice when I go to bake it. I've got my oven, by the way, over here on 350 Fahrenheit, 175 Celsius, if I'm doing it right, doing that math right. I want to make sure that's nicely preheated, fully preheated. So don't forget to do that like I did the other night when I made this the first time. Again, all that moisture in the marinade and the yogurt and such kind of puts a damper on the charring at first, but don't worry, see how it's all bubbling and boiling off here? We'll get char. Just be patient. You can see what I did here on this particularly large chicken breast here. I made those cross cuts. Also, remember, I don't have to have this chicken completely cooked here. In fact, I don't want it completely cooked, because we still got all the oven time for the bake with the rice. So I'm going to call that good. Even though they're still raw on the inside, I'm getting some good char like I want. So over here, and they will finish. Of course, something fell over. If I was to cook them all the way to done and then put them in the rice and cook them again, that would be unfortunate, shall we say. I'm not going to lose all these beautiful charred bits either. I'm going to make sure that they get mixed into the sauce. So that last breast needs to go in. Put just a touch more oil in there, just so it doesn't stick too badly. I am going to deglaze this pan as well. So get rid of this. This is toxic waste now. So that one breast is cooking a lot faster on its own. I probably should have only done 2 at a time. The point is, don't crowd your pan. And you see this little chicken tender over here, that's going to cook a whole lot faster. So that's what I want. I want to see that black crusty bit. Oh, there's. All right, I want to pull that little extra tender out. I'm keeping it on a plate just to show you guys, conserve those resting juices. They are pure flavor. But that has got all my chicken nicely charred. But as you can see through those slits, not even close to done in there. That's okay. That's what we want right now. I am going to take a little bit of my chicken stock here and just deglaze this pan a bit. Do not lose the charred bits. Deglaze this pan, don't lose these juices. They are pure flavor. Okay, so that, if I go grab my lifty thingy, can come off the heat. It's going to squawk at me, so I'm going to turn this off. Pardon me while I move off screen with this. And now I'm going to come in with my handy dandy brazier. Oh, these things are heavy. This is all cast iron, by the way. That's kind of important because the cast iron holds the heat, and I found, or maybe I'm just used to, using the cast iron when I do these kind of rice in stock dishes. I just kind of know how it's going to behave. I know when to pull it out early so that the carryover heat doesn't dry out the rice. So chicken over here out of the way. Go back to the cooking top, induction top. Let's get a little bit of onion action in that pan. And now that I'm in the enameled cast iron, I want to switch utensils. I don't want to use that metal spatula. If I can find my good, here we go. Here's my good spatula, my good wooden spatula, or my favorite wooden spatula. I've had this thing for, I've had this thing for a decade. I wish I would have bought 3 of them because wooden spatulas have gotten substandard of late. Maybe I'm just not shopping in the right place. All right, so I just want these onions to soften a bit. I don't want them to soften a lot. Over here, I've got my mushrooms and my peppers. I had a couple green onions left over. I'm just going to put those on at the end. But I think I'm going to go ahead and use all of these mushrooms, even though it's probably not particularly traditional. But I had them, and they'll be delicious. So let's come over here. I should get a little bit of garlic going on here if I can avoid breaking everything in the fridge. And I should, obviously to preference, but I should add just a little bit of heat as well. I'm going to knock that temperature down 1 notch. Let's get the garlic. How about 3 cloves? One of the problems people have sometimes when they're sauteing onions is they go a little too fast. That's why I knock that temperature down. I'm not looking for color here, but I find that onions benefit from slightly slower cooking. Again, this was just about 6. I think they were brown mushrooms, button mushrooms. But when I add a little bit of spice to this, I want to make sure that that spice, as well as this garlic, and chilies. I want to make sure that they hit hot oil, because that hot oil, especially with the spices, will cause the flavors to bloom and come out. It's a lot better than just dumping them in with the stock, for example. You don't want to do that. Nah, needs a little bit more time on the mushrooms. What I'm trying to do with the mushrooms basically is drive off the moisture. I want to concentrate them down. But in the middle of this, I'm going to take a little bit of oil and make sure that my garlic and chili hit that. And here is that other little bit of spice I was telling you about. Again, I had, I think, probably 2 tablespoons in the marinade. I'm only putting in a tablespoon more because we'll get a lot of that off of the chicken, but viewers. All right, now I'm going to use 1 more spoonful of oil, and in goes my rice. And here's one of the technique things. You want to make sure that those rice grains get coated in oil, just like making a risotto or a paella or a bazillion other rice dishes. You want to try to get that oil all over each grain. And since I'm on a reasonably low heat, and because the pan is holding heat for me, I've got a little time to do this. I don't have to rush. It's not like the rice is going to burn. It's going to toast a little bit, which is nice. So spend some moments. Go to your Zen spatula space and really coat those grains, because that will help it turn out fluffy at the end. Oh, I probably ought to get these peppers ready. I don't know how many I'm going to use. I could have easily taken these peppers to the broiler and charred them to take the skins off, and that would be an interesting addition. I might even prescribe that in the recipe when I get around to writing it. But for now, I just left the skins on. These are actually also up here in Canada, these are hothouse grown, and I've noticed that the hothouse peppers, their skins are a lot thinner than field grown, shall we say. So I don't really have that much of a problem with the skins. But adjust according to your local supply or your garden supply. I would love to have enough season to grow beautiful peppers like this, but the sun and backwoods Canada, not the best of friends. We don't see each other that much, you know. We're acquaintances. That enough pepper? What do you guys think? This much pepper or more pepper? And also, I'm gonna get them into the middle of the pan. I think that's probably enough for this volume. If I was clever, I would have been weighing how much I'm putting in here just so I could tell you guys later, but I think we're ready for some stock action here. I know she wants to be involved. She thinks I'm talking to her, so I'm going to go just a little bit of stock at first because I need to get some tomato paste in there. She wants to go outside. Let's call that 1.5. Let's call that 2 good tablespoons of tomato paste. Do you really want to go out? She does. She really wants to go out. Okay, here you go. My new girl has a bit of Call of the Wild left in her. She really, I don't know how long she lived outside on her own. Not very long. You can tell that she's obviously lived in houses with people. But, yeah, she's not domestic. I think when winter comes, she might be more domestic. But I'm using this tomato paste for flavor, obviously, but this is what I'm going to use to color the rice. If you were making this in the Spanish vein, you would use saffron. If you were making this in the Puerto Rican or Latin American vein, you might possibly use annatto. Annatto oil and saffron will both color things that telltale red. I just don't happen to have either at the moment. That, by the way, was 500 milliliters of stock for 600 grams of rice. And I know for a fact that I need another 250 milliliters, which I'm just getting it out of the fridge here. That's so we're talking a total of 750 milliliters of liquid. That was 200, and now I'm going in with the juice from that spare tomato. So again, 750 milliliters of liquid to 600 grams of rice. Oh, and geez, you guys, how did you guys let me forget this? Hang on. You remember those chicken resting juices? In they come. Swish, swish, swish. So, here's a question. Do I want to put those tomatoes in? What do you think? That's it's just spare tomato and a little bit of spare cilantro. Which, by the way, I can't garnish tonight with cilantro because I forgot to buy some. I'm going to put these tomatoes in. Because what else am I going to do with them, right? Just give them a quick chop through. Let's get these juices in there. You'll notice also that I've stayed at low heat from just making sure nothing's sticking to the bottom of the pan, and it's not. When I say generous pieces, I mean it. I'm just going to go in whole with that. For this, I'm going 1, 2, 3 pieces. I don't want wimpy little chicken pieces because wimpy chicken pieces dry out a lot faster than big generous chicken pieces. And who, by the way, wants to get wimpy chicken pieces when they're served? We want nice, big, fat, charred chicken pieces. And you'll notice that my pan is rapidly filling up. That is by design. I want this just about full because of, again, the way the rice cooks. It's going to perfectly fill this up. So when you see me finish writing the recipe, I'm writing it for a 3.5 quart, 3.3 liter brazier. If yours is bigger or smaller, you may have to adjust your measurements. If you don't have a brazier, one, shop for one at the Christmas sales. But two, don't fret. You could do this in a Dutch oven, for example, but you don't want to fill the Dutch oven nearly as full. You want to make sure that you stay about 2.5, 3 inches deep in whatever dish you use. So don't feel like you got to run out and buy a several $100 brazier. I wouldn't buy a several $100 brazier anyway, after some of the antics pulled by a brand name that shall remain nameless. But you can get a discount brazier. Cast iron's really easy to make, quite frankly. A lot of people get it right, even the cheap Asian imports. Most of them are made in Asia anyway. So you can get a brazier for $40. There you go. That's the gratuitous pre-bake shot. That's off. There we go. We'll clean up later. Okay, so this is heading into the oven. I do not have an oven cam, so you'll just have to trust me. Again, that's at a 350 Fahrenheit, 175 Celsius, fully preheated. For everybody that's here for cooking, don't worry, the rice is just in the oven right now. So we're watching kittens while the rice bakes. So this recipe doesn't get too stodgy. You want a little bit of brightness added right at the end, right as you serve it. You could just use, plain old bottled lemon juice if that's all you got. But in my case, I think lime is the way to go. So one more try. You see that little tiny bit of extra moisture I put in there is completely absorbed, just what it needed. Yep, that rice is spot on. Just a little bit of bite left to it. Perfect, absolutely perfect. I should say, the chicken stock I used, I had already mixed salt into the chicken stock there. So, and I did taste a couple times. I don't know if the camera was on or not, but you obviously want to get the salt right. Although it's a little bit tricky because you're tasting the liquid before the rice absorbs it. So if you taste the broth right as you go into the bake, it should probably be just a little bit saltier than you expect. But get your salt and pepper right before it goes in the oven, because you don't really have much chance to do that afterwards. So there you go. That is my rice and chicken casserole with Latin American influences. Some people would call it Mexican. Some people would call it Puerto Rican. I just call it delicious. I do appreciate you liking and thumbs upping and tweety space booking and all that other crazy stuff that you guys do. There's links down below the video for everything that you need to know about this. It'll be a full recipe out on my blog. Until next time, I am Mr. Spork. These are Mr. Spork's hands. Now, go cook some rice.